Hello everyone and welcome to the And More Bus Videos YouTube channel. You joined me and More Central, otherwise known as And More Bus Videos, depending on what channel or what day of the week you ask. And welcome to Gainsborough Bus Station. Gainsborough on the sort of Lincoln extension release, where we can now drive to Lincoln. That's kind of what we're going to do in this video. Now, in more recent times, you associate Gainsborough with having sort of some of the last oldest Dennis Tridents left in service. Gainsborough in the East Midlands always quite notoriously and well known for having old vehicles on fleet. And the East Midlands and Gainsborough were also one of the last places to run Volvo Olympians within the stagecoach sort of companies on daily service. Stagecoach in the East Midlands, specifically in Gainsborough, ran quite a number of RL, the more sort of common type of Olympian that Stagecoach ended up buying, the RL bodyworked Volvo Olympians. However, down the road in Lincoln, they gained a few Northern Counties Palatine ones, and it wasn't too much of an uncommon practice for those RHHK vehicles, specifically R169 HHK, to end up in Gainsborough on services such as the 105, the 107 from Lincoln. Bearing in mind the 100 service was run by Gainsborough Depot themselves. We don't have the 107 yet, yet being the key word, as I imagine Mr. Moose is working on a project involving that. We do have the 100, and as has been commonplace in the past, if a vehicle for whatever reason breaks down, let's say on that route, Lincoln would provide a bus, or let's say they need a vehicle on loan, they could then use the 100 service to transfer that vehicle to and fro Gainsborough and Lincoln depots, and with either one of those storylines, whichever one you want, i.e. it's either we're covering for a breakdown or we're transferring the bus back to Lincoln. In this scenario, we are going to be taking R169 HHK on the 100 service from Gainsborough Bus Station to Lincoln Bus Station. So we'll get the vehicles set up. It's important to note that... How do I... There we go. I always forget how to set this bus up. There we go, that's the one. It's important to note that the bodywork on the real-life R169 HHK is a short wheelbase. This is a longer wheelbase sort of variation, replicating a specific batch that Stagecoach got. Unfortunately, to the best of my knowledge, none of that batch ended up in the East Midlands, so I've done a little bit of flicker searching, found that this vehicle was in sort of Northern Counties Palatine bodywork, operated in Gainsborough, operated in the East Midlands, and thought it's the best fit that we can achieve. So I thought, why not? Also to note, this does have LED displays. The real-life Olympian that we're trying to recreate ran with dot matrix, so just another important bit to note. And by the looks of it, it's wanting to show us the 100 Lincoln twice. So if we do that, then will that make a difference? Or will it just make it look a bit weirder? Let's have a look. I mean, that works. I like that. That weirdly works. It wouldn't be uncommon practice, actually, many years ago, for Olympians and sort of older vehicles, when we had destinations reprogrammed into them, for the destinations to be in a weird layout. I know that a small number of vehicles with First West Yorkshire in Bradford, I think one of them specifically was 31770, one of the RHs, ran around on local services just displaying the number, presumably because the bus was only expected to be on schools. When it operated over public bus services, they only put the number on the display because they didn't think, obviously, they need to program in all the lines. So it ran around with just the number on the front. So you do services like the 680, for example, from Bradford, with literally just a line saying 680 on it. No destination, nothing else, just the number. So there are photos like that, photos that I've taken myself as well, that can prove things like this. And I do also know that vehicles sometimes, I'm certain, somewhere in the Stagecoach fleet, an Olympian has run round with a destination very similar to this. So again, it's not uncommon practice. So we'll run it round with just 100 Lincoln on the front. Something a bit different, and as I say, I'm certain that there'll be a photo somewhere of this being replicated in real life. So I don't know how the Olympians actually going to cope on this 100 service. I do know that there's quite a lot of open plains and things, so I'm not expecting a very speedy run from A to B. However, off the mark, I think it's going to do us rather proud, as you can physically see. So we'll definitely gain time going through villages and things with the speedy acceleration. Oh, come on, game. There you go. With this speedy, I don't know why it's. Come on. There we go. It seems to be doing that at the moment, where I need to look at the settings. But when it loads in the first couple of tiles, it seems to have some sort of crisis. It seems to be fine, as you'll notice in previous videos. It's fine after that. It's just when it's loading in the first couple of tiles, it has a little bit of a wibbly moment, panics, and then proceeds just to not work. So got past that bit now, so hopefully all of the points sailing. I love how everybody's gone upstairs as well. Bus spotters dream to have the entire downstairs by the engine empty for a long run like this on the main A roads. So just like it is now in East Midlands, Stagecoach was the Lincoln was the main hub of sort of the Stagecoach dump for the East Midlands area. So although you've got Gainsborough, places like that that do run relatively old vehicles, the old vehicles that they run tend to be relatively reliable, don't tend to have that many problems, and Lincoln seems to just get all the random batches, random oddity vehicles to sort of run and put on the reserve fleet, take off the reserve fleet, use like darts and things, and reserve darts and staff canteens and that kind of thing. That's the kind of place that Lincoln is. So when you do make a trip to Lincoln, and whenever those of you watching do, if you are local to it or watch it on YouTube, including my videos that I did of Lincoln buses, you'll notice just how random the fleet is there, from their brand new MMCs to their movement to the selection of rather elderly darts. I think they've still got the KV53 reg in service in Lincoln as well, that was recently painted into the new livery, from the 53 plate dart to random tridents from different varying batches and things like that. It's an incredibly random operation, it must be said. I am trying to drive rather quickly out of Gainsborough, because I am conscious that when we get onto the A roads I'm going to lose a bit of time because it isn't the fastest of vehicles. I'm also conscious that it might actually be quite a quiet run. Though the 100 is usually on this map, because of how often two phases out long distance maps and things, it's never usually the busiest of routes, but I do have a sneaking suspicion that this is going to be rather quiet. But I was thinking of what to drive in this route, as I decided I wanted to give this route a go, and obviously with the Olympian being relatively recent in an alpha release, I thought that obviously with East Midlands being quite well known for their Olympians back in the day and having quite a varied fleet across the operation, I thought it'd be rude not to drive this bus here. With that said though, it is important to remember that the Olympian at the time that I am filming this, to the best of my knowledge, has been taken down. It was briefly released as a public alpha. Public alpha basically being this idea that it's still a work in progress bus. As you'll see, I didn't mess with the blind because the blind thing doesn't exist yet. We don't have a ticket machine to set up because it hasn't been programmed in yet. And these kind of things, so it is very much just a basic vehicle at the moment. However, as you can hear, it still sounds lovely. The model's lovely, and you are driving an Olympian, quite nice. But it is only an alpha release at this stage. It does not represent the final product, and at the time that I'm filming this, to the best of my knowledge, as I say, there isn't a link for it available. There isn't a download for it, as that was taken down. Presumably, due to the fact that the developer V3D had enough people testing most at the time. Because at the end of the day, sometimes the sort of alpha releases and stuff like that, and these kind of things are always best controlled in a limited manner to obviously ensure that the testing that they want gets done, but then it's not released ethically on mass. That basically means then people are getting confused between alpha releases, final releases, and things start getting quite wibbly at that point, and it's not a situation you really want to be in. With Stagecoach, they were more commonly known outside of London, although they did get a batch for London as well, to have the Alexander RL bodywork on their vehicles instead of the Northern Counties Palatine. The Northern Counties Palatine Olympians predominantly came from London, as sort of London, basically when you look at the bus industry in the UK, you look at everywhere and then you look at London. London was a bit different in the way that Stagecoach in London got Northern Counties Palatines, presumably because the bodywork was slightly cheaper or something along those lines. So it was predominantly Northern Counties down there with the old Alexander RL batch produced. For I believe it was 1 or 2 services got the RLs, the majority were Northern Counties. So when they came to the end of their life in London, the vehicles, along with some that had been inherited along the line, and some second-hand purchases here and there, as well as obviously the small batches that were purchased far outside of London. As don't get me wrong, there were small batches, but it was predominantly still the RL that most places preferred in Stagecoach UK. The London ones transferred out and joined the other small random batches of Palatines, such as the one that this model does actually represent in the Stagecoach. That basically meant that Stagecoach was very interesting for Olympians, because everywhere you went, you'd get an assortment of different vehicles from different batches of Olympian present, like totally different, new, different years, new to different places, new for different uses, and you'd sort of, especially places like East Midlands and like Lincoln and Mansfield, really benefited from this, because from an enthusiast perspective, their range of vehicles was just phenomenal, because it was all sorts of different bits of batches. Like you can imagine it now, obviously with the Dennis Tridents, they've got 18164 that's a GX54 plate, Trident running around with some MKO2s that are then sort of accompanied with some YNO6s, and there's a few others in between. But you can imagine it with Olympians, where all these different years worth of Olympians from all over the place, including London at the time as well, because bearing in mind most of the Tridents that were new to London never actually escaped London now. All of the older X-Regs and V-Regs and T-Regs got withdrawn through DDA, the Disability Discrimination Act, and most of Tridents since then, like the O3 plates and things, have rarely escaped London. They've not escaped London that much for normal service. Only a few have escaped for open top use and well reconverted for bigger sightseeing. But most, like the LX03 stuff like that, have ended up just being sold to scrap or sold onto other companies. So when you look at it now, the variety compared to what it would have been back then is just absolutely nothing. 2.4 minutes early. See how early we are when we get to the next point. Might also stop for a quick screenshot. Yeah, I keep forgetting this doesn't have that screenshot ability. Just get a vague, because I know the sunlight's not right, but if we just get some vague screenshots, just in case I do forget. And in fairness, that actually looks quite nice. So yeah, I think we might have found the thumbnail, but that does actually look quite nice. This location. See if we can get anything better. But you can only imagine, looking at the bus world now from an enthusiast perspective, how different it and how much more variety there was back in the day. I mean, Lincoln has this specific vehicle that, by the looks of it on Flickr, on rare occasion, I mean, still happened a fair bit, but it was still a sort of a rather rare thing for this to end up over in Gainsborough on service work, complementing their pretty strong fleet of RLs that they have. So, and then obviously they had old vehicles at the time, and because it all replaced Lincolnshire Road vehicles. So you can only imagine what East Midlands was like around here. I mean, Gainsborough's from Transport C300, you know, that could have shot past you. And while driving a route like this, you go down an Olympian, Transport C300 comes the other way, and it just is a totally different world to what we're in now with the bus industry, where I think there's a Transport C300 in Worcester, but it's probably one of the very, very small handful that's actually left in service. And the one in Worcester's quite funny because that appeared in Worcester only a couple of weeks after I visited, that was rather irritating because it did one of the duties and then I went on one of the darts. And don't get me wrong, the darts were lovely, but it would have been nice to obviously have a dart, have a Transport C300, just to sort of spice up the variety of vehicles, and because Transport C300s were well known in Worcester with first ones. Worcester and Redditch and that kind of area were first ran Redditch before Diamond took it over. Did used to have quite a strong fleet of Transport C300s, most of which ended up at Potteries, quite a number ended up with a good friend of mine in Foundation. And with those vehicles obviously having that relevance to that area, the Aston's, its company that got it, have started running this Transport C300 out of regular use, school configuration inside, with no blind and a paper destination. The paper destination blind bit doesn't really fuss me, although I still think it's very random, but I wouldn't have minded a trip on something like that. I think it'd be quite nice. I mean, it reminds me as well that whilst sort of I'm still in the north and whole of this lot, I do need to sample the station coaches Transport C300 again. Station coaches based in West Yorkshire, the base Batley area that's near Dewsbury, sort of near Wakefield, near Leeds, that kind of thing as you expand out. They run the 116 service between Wakefield and Leeds. The regular has its 2 street lights and an eclipse on it that we have covered in previous videos. However, they do have a Transport C300 to school specification that's regularly out on either that or their local Morley services, like a local estate service. And they also have a coach that's been out on service more regularly. Because basically they've taken on a bit more work in more recent times that meant that they needed more vehicles. So they've basically been quite premium with vehicles at the moment, so station coaches looking at a bit of work from Reva. That basically means it's quite interesting what they're putting out in service. Certainly an area of the network I'm hoping to visit at some point this month. I still find it ace how I drive this route, so I look at the area and go, yes, this is sort of Lincoln to East Midlands. And I have done the run from Scunthorpe to Lincoln, but I had the choice between an E400 MMC that took about 25 minutes longer, or a Dennis Dart on the 103. And at the time, as you will remember from the video, I chose the Dennis Dart. That shouldn't come as that much of a surprise. Minus 0.6. I just skip the time ahead usually on these runs because I've just realised there's no point of really waiting time around when I'm filming because I just sat somewhere random for 3 minutes. We're actually picking some people up here. Yeah, at the time I chose the Dart 103. That was a wise choice because, to the best of my knowledge, it was actually one of the last times the Dart did the 103. Initially I went for that route because I thought it was the ex-first Manchester Eclipse on it, that has since been withdrawn, the 06 reg. But on the day that did a morning trip on the 103, that was parked up. The Dart I went on was parked up, so the driver chose the Dart. Sometimes I have a little bit more free will to choose what they want to drive on longer routes like that. But I do kind of understand, because the Dart was incredibly nippy and I imagine the Eclipse wasn't as quick and it was probably a bit tired. The Dart was also quite nice. And again, does remind me that I do need to make a trip over to the East Midlands before the Sheffield way at the moment as well. That until the low emission zone comes in, the clean air zone in Sheffield Centre, Mansfield are still willing to send their old darts into Sheffield on what is probably more than it should be, more regular than it should be at the moment. And we've got 3 examples left in Mansfield, I believe now. 35136, 35135, and 34705. 34705 is a PX05, the other 2 are YM56 Redgers. I've been on all of them except 35136. 35136 at the time of filming is the one that is still yet to actually do the 53 to Sheffield. They keep putting 35135 in it, so that I went on the Pronto. You'll have seen the video on that on the main and more central channel. If you haven't already, do go and check that video out, as if you do love your Dennis darts. That one had a whistling turbo, and the driver absolutely floored it, so that was a nice video to film. And I've also been on 34705. It's a video releasing on this channel very soon, that I had on the 53 coming out of Sheffield, that I must say really struggled on the hills coming out of the centre. But I've been on those 2, haven't been on 35136, and I still really wouldn't mind, so I'm just waiting for that to drop on the 53. That and the next time that the Transmo C300 does the 53, because I will be a very happy bunny when those 2 do. I keep missing the Transmo C300 at the moment, and that is slightly doing my head in. I still really want to trip on it. So yeah, hopefully between now and the clean air zone, the Transbus E300 does drop. We're only a minute early. I'm hoping that the Transbus E300 does drop on the 53 to Sheffield, because I really wouldn't mind a trip on it before it goes, and I don't really fancy a trip all the way up to Mansfield just to go on that loose. Although you never know, in fairness, one might get their Tridents in as well, so a trip to Mansfield may be on the cards. We'll have to see what happens. So yeah, speaking of that, Mansfield, just like Sheffield, are going to be benefiting from the latest stagecoach order in 2023 with the new Environment 400 OMSI deckers. It's expected that with Mansfield they will pretty much wipe out every Trident. That's then anticipated that because Scunthorpe's struggling for vehicles at this current time, it's expected that the Trident will probably live out their last days in Scunthorpe and most likely in Gainsborough as well. Gainsborough has just had its Trident fleet slightly updated. A number of the old MX-53s have been withdrawn and scrapped, and they have been replaced by slightly newer 06 plate and 05 plate Tridents. But not told that you were waiting. So your friend, I assume your friend, was walking off into the distance, and I assumed you were doing the same. Make our way to Saxel Bay. This was all on the pretty much first release of Gainsborough, was sort of a little bit of this. I think we have more or less escaped the first part of the map on this. I'm quite certain there was definitely a little bit of this extension included. But the Saxel V bit was added first, and then it was followed by the Lincoln extension, just for sort of a reminder on that. So we can still drive up to Saxel V on the initial extension that added the 100, but the Lincoln extension is a more recent bit, and the bit that I do like, because having been to Gainsborough and having been to Lincoln, it sort of links the two together instead of me just jumping in a bus and driving on a random route I haven't been on to a random location. Also feels like you're driving for a little bit more purpose when you do this, even though we're currently doing 40 in a national speed limit zone. So the 100 route in real life is now run by E400 MMCs. There is a repaint for them in OMSI 2, and I am going to drive this route with that at some point when I'm sort of feeling like ultra modern realistic that will happen at some point. Because my AI list on this map usually is a modern stagecoach AI list, roughly replicating the Lincoln road. So I'm that kind of person. I do prefer running that instead of road car, because if we had the old road car vehicles in game, then I'm happy with it. However, because we don't either have the vehicles or we don't have the repaint on the specific vehicles to replicate it fully, because the road car AI list on the map is in real life, I imagine some people do really lean into the really like the road car idea. Personally, for me, it's a bit more like a realist kind of thing. I do prefer driving a bit more modern era with stagecoach, and then stuff like this, driving with vehicles that theoretically have visited places in the past. I don't think it'll have done the 100 or this vehicle that we're trying to replicate today, but I know it's definitely done services from Lincoln to Gainsborough. Yeah. Either way, it's alright as this. Just a little bit slow. Well, in fairness, as long as it doesn't conk out on me, I'm not fussed. Because I have had this bus conk out on me off camera in the past, and when I first got it I spent one evening driving on the West Country, driving the X5 between Totnes and Paynton, absolutely flooring it on the X35 as I was living about 15 to 20 minutes late in each direction, and at the moment on those current timetables there's absolutely no recovery time, so I was constantly chasing the clock and then getting stuck in the same traffic and ended up later and later. So it's absolutely flooring the bus. We're going up to the hill, just on the way to Totnes, going up to the hill just after Berwick Pomeroy to drop down into Totnes. And as it goes up the hill, I sort of push down the accelerator a little bit more, get a little bit more power out of it. And I feel the power decreasing, and the power being like, hang on a sec, it's slowing down, is this bus? And it just slowed down, and there was nothing happening. And then it just stopped. And the engine wouldn't restart, and they reset the electrics, reset the engine would restart, and the bus had well and truly just conked out. I don't know if it's something that was supposed to happen or not, but it just absolutely conked out. Could not move it. That was quite interesting. It literally just sat there with handbrake on or off. It would not move. Plenty of videos, as I reminisce over the Olympians, plenty of videos predominantly around West Yorkshire, but also do feature further afield of old Olympians, both in service and in preservation. So if you do fancy having a little look through them, all the playlists are easily identifiable, so do go and check them out, as it is something I do recommend doing if you get the chance. Quite a lot of Olympian videos on there, and there's also quite a number of Olympian videos still in my stores that haven't actually loaded yet. There'll be something I'll probably be looking into uploading later this year onto this channel, but current, there's quite a few that I took around, especially around Leeds Fest 2016, when it was pretty much like the final countdown for a lot of the first West Yorkshire Olympians and other operators Olympians as well. There's quite a lot of videos from that period that were taken on not the best recording equipment, but you can still hear the engine. And I still haven't uploaded them, so if it is something you're interested in watching, do let me know in the comments, and I will look into getting them uploaded later this year. So this is where the old Saxon terminus used to be. As you can see, the 100 turns here. Sign was left up. That's because this is still the initial release I was given. I believe in the final release that's being uploaded, that arrow has been removed because I just used the initial map that I was given access to. I haven't updated it yet. We're driving on maps, and it's still pretty nice. Basically, because I have the AI list set up on this and everything, it just makes life a bit easier to just run with this update until we get a major update to the map that warrants me downloading the latest one. Don't really want to have left Saxon as well. There we go. Don't want to have full left Saxon be almost 5 minutes early if I can help it. I still find it ace how it's the A57 from Worksop to Lincoln, the same A57 that you do from Worksop to Sheffield, and the same A57 that you do from Sheffield to Manchester. It's sometimes quite easy to sort of forget that, but it's so cool, this idea that you just stayed on the same road from Manchester, went over the Snake Pass through Sheffield, straight down Parkway, over to Worksop. You'd end up pretty much on this road heading into Lincoln. I think that would be a heck of a trip. Yeah, it's definitely not the bus I would use on this route regularly. I feel like it would get a little bit irritating if you use this on this route regularly. And I think you'd sometimes struggle for time, or struggle to catch up for time even if you're running late. With the counterparts like the OMSI actually keeping up to having the limiter that's actually the speed limits on the roads, that's not 40, means that if for whatever reason you do end up running late from out Lincoln in real life, let's say a Scunthorpe, you can catch up the time. So there is also the brand new extension on this map to, I believe it's Scotland or something. I haven't driven that yet in the video, what have you know. I fancied driving the Lincoln side of the route in this one, and I didn't fancy too much of a long trek. So from Gainsborough to Lincoln being 50 minutes, it worked out quite nice. I didn't fancy driving the entire extension through. I will be driving that in a future video though, and I am quite excited because now that northbound extension has been confirmed, it does start to beckon the question of when the extension to Scunthorpe is going to be, because it will be very, very cool to be able to drive 100 all the way through from Scunthorpe to Lincoln. That is something I'm incredibly excited about. Very, very excited to do it. There is also this idea with the extensions, and potentially, as I have said a few times, it would be quite nice to see an element of Retford included, potentially. I know Mr. Moose might be watching. If sort of the potential of an extension to Retford could be done, i.e. either the 97 or the 95, probably the 95 as the 97 goes all over the place, but some nice extension little bits for the 95 would be nice to go into Retford, and then potentially if you got to Retford you could then interwork it with the 47s that your town service in Retford, so it would have two purposes with that. I'm not saying an extension up to Doncaster would be needed for that. Doncaster extension would be nice, however obviously that would be quite a big task, so I think something like Retford after Scunthorpe Retford is definitely achievable. I still find it amazing that pretty much most of the roads into Lincoln from the north are exactly like this. The 103 service takes a different approach into Lincoln, had roads and roundabouts and trees and shrubbery identical pretty much to how this is laid out. Absolutely identical. Isn't the most ideal when it can only do 40. However, we are still slightly catching up the time. I'm unpositive, it's because I'm not driving the Veiling. I'm not ended up about 10 minutes early, so that is a plus of sorts. I do need to have another drive for the Veiling on here, because Grimsby do have sort of eclipses. They don't have the eclipse do bodywork on, but they do have eclipse ones in Interconnect delivery that do their 51 to Louth regularly. So from Louth to Grimsby, when I did that route, Dennis tried 2 E400s on it. So I won't mind actually, in fairness, if I end up in that part of the world again, to actually to actually sample the eclipses on the 51, because I imagine that's quite nice. And then in turn to that, drive said eclipses on here for a nice bit of contrast. The eclipses that they have over in Grimsby are the DKO9s that were new to first in Chester in 2009, inherited by Stagecoach 2013-ish when they purchased the first bus in Chester operation. I believe the last eclipses that were in use in Chester have also now been withdrawn from the reserve fleet. I believe their last sightings, I don't know if they're still there, but the last sightings in service were briefly in Preston. I do need to have a little look on the tracker to see actually where they are now, but it got quite exciting when they were in Preston because they were doing the Blackpool services, and then there was also the potential that they could do the services up to Skipton. That braked a bit harsher than I thought. I think it's because I'm just used to going quite fast along those roads and braking quite harshly from 40s. Actually, they're not as bad as braking quite harshly from about 60-65 miles an hour. Getting into the main part of Lincoln now, going through the suburbs, picking all the people up. I've looked at the network map in Lincoln, and I must say, the people that live on these streets that we're driving through now are incredibly unlucky, because most other places get quite a frequent service with the city bus routes. This specific road coming in is predominantly only served by 100. That runs hourly, the 100 and the 107 running about 5 times a day, so they really lose out compared to other parts of Lincoln. to say everywhere else gets services between every 5 to 10 minutes, these parts definitely do lose out. Really, really do. Although in fairness to these suburbs going into the centre here, it isn't as extensive as suburbs elsewhere having been round Lincoln on the buses. Oh, we're just under a minute early, so we're doing okay. We'll pretty much get into Lincoln bang on time if these lights change. I'm hoping they do. And it's just started raining as well. Oh dear. One thing else that must be noted is the windows on this bus haven't been set up yet to get rain on them. That means I can do that, but I don't really need to, because they won't get a silly amount of rain in them yet, thankfully. It is very, very strange to watch like the massive raindrop come down and just have a clear windscreen. It's quite an odd thing, quite a unique thing at the moment. Change the line to not in service. And that's where everybody's cut up. Into the bus station. I still find it odd with these realistic maps, because it's like this bit where we go around here to the right hand side. I've walked along there and it's so odd. I've walked all the way along there, all the way down from the train station into the bus station. I've seen 100s come in and leave, so it's always so odd, so odd to obviously have this contrast of how realistic it's been made, even with the limited sort of assets that are still available in OMSI. No custom objects with this, it's all reuse stuff that exists, and it's still created such a realistic crossing. It is Lincoln, so you might have just stopped to pick somebody up. There we go, so we have arrived. We'll get everybody off the bus and then we will go into one of the layover bays. You see the not in service plan looks alright. It's just everyone, just the 100 Lincoln that's not programmed in properly. Something that would also be nice in an additional update is the proper inclusion of the Lincoln bus depot that, for context, I will show you in a second, but is literally just round the corner from the bus station. we go. So that's us in Lincoln, and for context, the bus depot is literally somewhere around here, and so wouldn't take too much effort to include it really. That would be quite nice. So there we go. So that was the 100 service from Gainsborough to Lincoln in only 46 minutes. It's time to take 50, so we did quite well with that. A very nice bus. Probably not best suited to a long distance country road, A road kind of route like this, because it's currently limited to 40, but it still would be something that would occasionally happen in the East Midlands back in the day of Olympians, where something like this would probably end up on the Interconnect 100 because they had so many Olympians. And sometimes with how the company is based out over there, you'd need to just use the first bus that's available. That in our example was this one. Still a very nice bus. Remember, it is still in alpha stages, so some stuff isn't representative of the final product, and it isn't currently available yet. However, do keep your eyes out as there may be another sort of update to the alpha release or a beta release at some point, or in the not so distant future. There probably will also be a proper public final release, just like there was with the Solo. So if you have enjoyed this video, do be sure to click that like button so that more people can find it and enjoy like you have. And if you haven't already, do be sure to subscribe to the And More Bus Videos YouTube channel for more content like this from the simulation section, from OMSI 2, maps such as the free to download Gainsborough map, like this one that I do highly recommend, as well as the other maps, other buses, other repaints that I drive, as well as other simulators, alongside an archive of over 4,500 backseat and engine-focused public transport videos from the UK and beyond, including vehicles from the past and present, and quite an archive of Olympians, some of which in preservation, some of which in service that have long since been scrapped. So do go and check out those archives. The playlists are always quite easy to go through, and if you do enjoy what you see with that and this, be sure to subscribe for more. Once again, though, I'd like to thank you all for watching. I really hope you've enjoyed this one, and I will see you all in the next one I make. Goodbye for now. Bye.